people.
Were you well taught?
I would say yes, yeah. The anatomy was very traditional. I mean, it occupied such a large piece of the first year, and it was, but there was great emphasis on teaching as part of the mandate of the professors. Mm-hmm. Much less focus on research in those days. There's only very few who did serious research in the faculty. There were contrasts in style and approach. Anatomy was very traditional. I mean, the bones, the dissection, the microscopy, all of that is fairly standard. It was taught in a very standard way. Of course, in that area, Manitoba had quite a history with the likes of J.C.B. Grant and his textbook, and all of that was part of the approach. And then in some of the other subjects, particularly in the first couple of years, it almost a contrast with Joe Doupe, professor of physiology, who had a very different approach, attitude to education. When I think back of Joe in today's world, I think his evaluations would have caused the faculty to find another place for him.
How so?
Well, he labored his approach to the lecture. I mean, he was a very halting speaker. There were these long, indefinite, or pauses of indefinite duration, where at periodic intervals he would, light a cigarette and go through a number of facial contortions between the finishing one phrase and starting another, and it was a convoluted presentation. So we weren't ever quite clear what was the message, what were the key points, what were the take-home messages. None of that. It was, in a sense, posing the questions, and there were textbooks, but the script in the textbooks weren't followed necessarily. And what was the most interesting and daunting to the students were his weekly or every 2-week series of questions that were most perplexing and difficult. But he expected people to analyze the question, and often there were 2 or 3.
Now, are you telling me that Doupe did stimulate you, or you survived?
I would say initially it was more sense of survival, mm-hmm. But over time came to understand that there was a method to his madness, mm-hmm. And became more evident in the second year when he had the view that which again was quite unusual for that period, that these laboratory exercises that were the norm, where a set piece was given and you were to follow and get a predictable result. That was a rather mindless approach to education. And so he arranged with those professors who had some research interest that every student would engage in a research project. And it was a professor's job to kind of set up the stage, and at the end of the exercise, students were expected to write it up and present it like a scientific paper. And then the class was the judge. The evaluation of the entire exercise, which is a major portion of the mark, was really delegated to the students. And their evaluation of the content, the presentation, and all of that. So it was an interesting, it was a very interesting and stimulating period.